for continuance for VAR 2406 and SE 2404.
Yes, my name is Jason Miller, Australian Development Corporation. Yes, we'd like to push this BZA and the SE for next month. Yeah, can you hear me?
Should be on.
Yes, so I'd like to respectfully request that we continue on the BZA and the SE request. I understand there's been a number of concerns in regards to development. I'd like to be able to address those before we vote on the proposed development.
Can you please state your name and address?
Yeah, my name is Jason Miller. I'm at 1346 Concordia Drive, Avon.
And if I remember right, the continuance is a matter of right for the first one.
Yeah, the rules of procedure do allow for one petition by right, or one continuance per petition.
So because it's by right, you have to go on.
I think you should probably. What do you think?
Okay. So we will request for a continuance. Is there any discussion or we have to hear about the motion?
This is the first one.
Correct.
Are you working things out with staff? Have there been concerns addressed that you need to address with staff?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see the reason why they're entitled to it by right anyways.
Make motion that we continue VAR 2406, 891 North Avon Avenue to the November 19th meeting.
Second.
And just for the record, unless you want to do them separately, you should also do that the 24-04 in that motion. Yeah, modify my motion to include special exception 2404, 891 North Avenue, Avon Avenue, to be continued to the November 19th meeting of the museum.
So we have a motion and an amended motion by Mr. Hugenberger.
Second.
And we have a second by Mrs. Ransford. Any discussion? Ready for the vote?
Ann Inman? Yes. Avon Ransford? 4. Paul Hugenberger?
4.
Marcy Tasha? 4. Margaret Turner?
4. We are continuing next month. Vote please. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Is Ed Bud sustain work?
Should be on.
Should be on.
Start again.
My name is Ed Bud. I live at 7068 Bridgemont Court, along with a whole bunch of people back there that are from Bridgemont Court. How many of you opposed the thing as proposed? Oh,
I didn't hear what you asked them.
I asked them to raise their hands if they were opposed. It's pretty much unanimously opposed.
Does this have to do with something that's on the agenda tonight?
It's on the, it's the thing you just continued. I just wanted to ask the question, I'm prefacing it by saying we all showed up because we're opposed. And my concern is that by continuing it to next month, does that trigger a new requirement to put out a legal notice of a hearing? Do we have to go through those formalities again, or do we all just have to know to turn up next month on the whatever date, 19th?
So whether or not the board in its discretion, I believe, could require a new notice to be sent if they wanted to, but typically a new notice would only be required if they were requesting different variances than what have already been advertised, or if they were requesting a deviation from the ordinance that's greater than what's already been advertised. Otherwise, a new notice typically would not be required.
Council, is that your understanding to the notice requirements?
Yes.
My only concern is that putting it off means that it could somehow slip through the cracks, that hearing gets moved to another date or something. We're all very serious about this. We all want to make sure we show up. So I just want to know what the rules were. And for the record, we don't get to make our comments that we came, I take it we don't get to make our comments that we came prepared to make tonight. But for the record, opposition is unanimous on our cul-de-sac for reasons other than, and I guess the staff had a lot of concerns in the staff report about things like parking and the tree line and privacy and all that. We are very much, we very much have the same concerns, plus some others about traffic impact that doesn't affect us, but affects the town. And just want to make sure that we're on record that, you know, if you have another meeting and none of us are here, something's gone wrong. So, okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Bud? Mr. Bud? So you authored this email, right?
I sent an email last
Yes,
night.
okay. It's the first time I'm seeing it, but, so when you say our objections and concerns, but you're the only signature on here, are you kind of the spokesperson for this group?
No.
So who's?
I was saying our, O-U-R,
I
in
just
terms of
want to know who's.
my wife and me.
Okay,
Her name is at the bottom.
that's all I want to know. I didn't know if you were. That's fine.
Okay.
We'll do it next one.
But
Come back.
I know that it's unanimous, but I was speaking only for my wife and I.
Okay, thank you.
West, I live at 6962 Woodridge Drive. I don't understand how all this goes on, this is all new to me. I'm here for the same reason. I don't live in their neighborhood, I live across 267 from where the lot is that they're wanting to develop, so same issues. But if there are changes, if they come back and make changes, do we get to see those before the meeting? Because I can see what they want now, I can see where the lines are and you know, how many feet they're asking for and stuff. Will we get to see that before the next meeting? Any changes they make?
They can come in anytime, anybody can come in anytime, the reception is all,
Can you make sure you're speaking into the microphone?
Yeah, we would expect that if something's gonna go forward next month with changes, that we would have those revisions at least 2 weeks before that hearing date. So you can certainly, as Jessica was saying, you could come into our office or contact me and I can email you information, or you can come in and look at what any of the revised plans might be. You know, it also might not be a bad idea for one or more of you to exchange information with the petitioner, so that, you know, you can be aware of what your concerns are, and that he can, you know, send his revised plans to you as well and submit them to us. And then he might be able to address, you know, some of your concerns as they look at redesigning your plans.
So like around November 5th, November 7th, come back in and see what the new plans are, so we have a little bit of time to look at it.
Sure.
Is that reasonable?
Yes.
Also, 1 week prior to the hearing, the staff report posted online, which has all the information in it and any changes will be outlined.
So when we
1 week prior to
the 19th,
19th,
it'll be online.
it'll be posted.
Okay, thank you.
So just to be clear here, our next, those two cases we just continued, those will be heard on Tuesday, November 19th in this room, 6:30 p.m. If there are changes, those revisions get reviewed by staff, they will issue
Hi, yes, I'm willing to stay after the meeting to meet with all of you and address any of your concerns and get those written down so I can adjust and make changes as necessary to, for staff. So if you're willing to do that, I'd be happy to meet afterwards. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Noble, my husband Steve Noble. We live at 843 North State Road 267, so we're not the house that's right beside it, but we're the next house. Our concern is the same as everyone else's. When I looked up, like what is actually, like I looked up, and I don't know, we were like, so sorry, but I looked up the curriculum, I don't know how to say it, but the building place, and they show like 6 lofts at the top, plus 6 buildings at the bottom, 6 like businesses. So when we saw the plans that was written up, there was only like 1 building on the bottom floor. So when does that get finalized? Is that going to be at the meeting next time? Because that's all on
We
mine.
continue this because there are anticipated changes. So we can't really answer some of the questions you have tonight because we haven't seen those changes either. Those changes will be available for all of you to review by November 12th, which is online. I would strongly urge all of you to do that. Obviously, we love, if there's anything we hate, is coming in and having a meeting, having 1 or 2 people here. We appreciate this, and we like seeing citizen interaction and the engagement with the town. At this meeting, we're not hearing anything about this event today, and the concerns that you are all bringing might be addressed when they come back. And so that's why it's important for you to take a look at what the changes are. And it could be that some of the things that are concerned now will be alleviated, but we can't really address any of your questions because we haven't seen what the changes are going to be. Right?
But if they're online already trying to get these apartments filled, then that's pretty much in stone for them, right? Or not?
No, first of all, understand the scope of what we're in here for. This is the Board of Zoning Appeals. So in order to do their project, they need certain variances from us. So the first item that was continued on the agenda, that was a request from development standards to allow for 0-foot front building setback. The second item, that was not a variance, that was a special exception, and that was to allow for an upper story residence in a 3C use. So those 2 are the 2 items that we're focused on, and this is a matter of right. So after these, or possibly simultaneously, I don't know what the schedule is, but I would assume that this petition would also be coming in before the Plan Commission with actually develop a plan review, and that's where you can actually look at the site plans and understand what's going on. Their scope is much, much more broad as well. We are focused in on 2 very small issues. We're not reviewing the site, we're not reviewing the parking. We're only looking at these 2 very small things that are right. As opposed to reviewing a comprehensive plan as the Plan Commission.
They're asking for permission to do something different from what our zoning currently allows.
Okay.
That's basically what it is. And there are apparently some discrepancies or there's some issues that staff have raised and they want to have an opportunity to address those. They have the right to ask for 1 continuance, period. And we can't deny them that right. So that's why it's continued, and I understand the frustration. You all came here ready, informed, ready to speak, and that's being continued. This isn't uncommon. I would encourage you all to not only attend this meeting, but if you continue to have issues, come to the Planning Commission meetings, come to the Town Council meetings. I would encourage you to come to all of those meetings, not just when it's something that affects you directly, but always to be informed. So that's what they're asking for, permission to do things other than what is currently allowed in the zoning. And those are the only 2 things that we will be addressing at our meeting in November.
Okay. So I guess I was only confused because if they're advertising it, you know, and trying to get people in there, then.
We can't really address that. So, you know, they're anticipating approval. If they don't get approval, then they're not gonna be able to rent these spaces out. But we can, I mean, that's their business. That's what they're doing. We can't control that, so.
And what is there a plan commission hearing? Is this on the upcoming, in this case, the upcoming?
They have not filed for a development plan review because it wouldn't be compliant without these variances or revised site plan.
So that'll be first, and then there'll be one for
The variance and the special exception must be heard in order for them to file the second set of plans.
Okay.
Or they need to be revised and not meet variances. And the plans all along showed implied that there would be a second story residential, but the site plan that we have just top down footprint. It doesn't show the second story. It's not required.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Doug Franklin with Performance Services, 4670 Haven Point Boulevard, Indianapolis, Indiana. And I really do appreciate the comments from the last month's meeting. As Mr. Landy talked about, I'm just going to expound on number 3, the question number 3 in the docket. Just to give you a little bit of clarification. The main entrance, and I touched upon this in the last meeting, the main entrance to the school is moving, and obviously we don't want to confuse parents, students, and guests who are coming to the building. And that is really the reason we are moving and relocating that existing sign to the new location for the main entrance. And also, given the number of messages needed to be broadcast to parents, guests, students, in the residents of Avon, we just felt a manual sign. There's so many messages that need to be displayed. It would take a long time to update and communicate the messages. This electronic sign provides really a fast and safe and efficient manner to communicate a lot of messages to students, staff, parents, and guests. And also, we hope this sign is looked at by the community as an asset, a benefit for this information being provided to the community as well. As far as the conditions go, I just want to touch upon, I'll go through those. Condition number 1, we have no objection to the sign being black or basically off from the period of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We touched upon that last time, so we have no objection to that. The lighting plan, item number 2, we will submit a lighting plan, but I will explain a little bit of the differences. It's not like a traditional light pole where you're getting values or calculation. Here's why. During the day, the brightness of the sign can be turned up so you can see it more clearly. And then in the evening, that brightness is reduced or lowered for the evening. Also, the photometric of the lighting plan will be different depending on the message being displayed. So we will submit a lighting plan for it, but it will vary based on the text or the wording or the image that is on there. So there will be some variation in that photometric analysis that we do. Currently, the static images and change of the message currently at the school, the message changes every 10 seconds. I think they plan to stay with that 10-second allocation before the message changes as well. The sign does have the capability for moving objects such as like waving American flag, but the school has agreed to the static images on that sign. Background color number 4, background color displayed on the electronic message sign must be darker than the text color. This item here, we're going to ask for some special consideration for that. We asked, I think it was brought up last time, about the use of the white background. We asked that the use of the white background not be used. And here's a couple of reasons why the background color we're asking for special consideration for this. We can see with the background color, obviously Avon with the gold and black, we can see that color, background color being the Avon yellow, but the letters for the message could be black, and this would not meet that requirement as far as the background color being darker than the text color. This item here, we're asking for special consideration and change that to not using a background color of white. Item number 5, the sign shall be substantially compliance with the submitted site plan and elevation. We have obviously no objection to that, what was submitted. And then the item number 6, the freestanding, the existing freestanding sign with electronic message component shall be removed. And obviously we have no objection to that. I will add one clarification note. The overall footprint, and I think I addressed this last time, the overall footprint of the new sign is actually smaller than the one currently existing. So the overall tally footprint of the existing sign is 191 square feet of area. The new sign total area is 184 square feet. I'll be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Can you address the issue of practical difficulties? I think that that was the one that was most concerning to members of the board, and I believe you were instructed to come prepared to address that.
Yeah, so the practical difficulty of that is we don't want the sign in the current location because of confusion to parents, students, and guests arriving to the building. The new main entrance has moved. So with that sign, if it stayed in this current location, they would be pulling into a parking lot for students or for staff, some visitors, staff, but also the special education buses at that current curb cut into the parking lot area. We're obviously, we have a new main entrance, and we want to funnel and focus everyone to that new main entrance area.
I don't think that's the question of practical difficulty that we were asking. I don't think anybody here would disagree that if you have a new main entrance, you need a sign directing to people to the main entrance. The question we're asking is, what is the practical difficulty? What practical difficulty do you need to overcome that requires you to ask for a sign that is larger than what is currently allowed?
The square footage, we're not proposing a sign larger than what we have. We're actually reducing the size. So the size of the sign is smaller.
So I think there's a misunderstanding.
It's a electronic sign, not a size of the sign.
I know, but this is a brand new request for variance. This is not this is not building on the previous variance. Because it's being moved, it is now a brand new request for variance from the, was it 6 feet in height to, what, 12? This isn't asking for a change from the previous variance to a slight modification. Because you're moving the sign, it's now a brand new request for variance. So what we need to hear is, the biggest issue was, what is the practical difficulty that Avon High School is facing that requires you to have a sign that is greater than 6 feet in height?
Yeah, the current sign obviously is greater than 6 feet in height. So from that variance, so we're staying within that height limitation. So this new sign is not taller than the existing sign that we're.
Okay, forget the old sign. Forget the old sign. That doesn't matter. If you were staying in the same spot, then that would be something we could consider. But you're moving to a brand new spot. So it's like the old sign doesn't exist, so now you're starting from scratch.
Correct.
So what is the practical difficulty?
The difficulty is getting and making sure students, guests, and parents know that the main entry is at this location. And also in having the ability to make sure that they know that that entrance is the main entrance, but also communication of messages out to the community, also parents and staff as well.
Let me ask a question. You're implying, the way I understand it, is that having a sign there implies a main entrance. There's no indication that this is the main entrance. That sign has to be there to indicate a main entrance. That's kind of what I'm listening and hearing your argument, as opposed to leave the sign where it's at. Put a sign in the new entrance saying this is the main entrance.
Yes, we feel it caused a lot of confusion with leaving that sign at that current location. And we don't want a lot of cars in that front parking lot area because that would be the special education bus drop off and pickup once that parking lot is turned over. So yeah, we feel it would create a lot of confusion and possible congestion out on the roadway too if we left that sign at that location.
Is there going to be a stoplight put at the new intersection? Is that going to move where it currently is at?
The existing stoplight will remain as is.
There are road improvements that prohibit left turns. So is it a right in, right out, or is it a right in, left in?
I'm sorry,
There's no median that would prevent turning across traffic to get into that entrance. Is that correct?
So you can still turn in, you can turn into that entryway where the existing sign is. Yes, you can still turn in there.
A new entryway where you're going to put this sign, is there the ability to enter in there going east and west?
That is correct. There's a turn lane for both of those turns.
So you move the sign to promote an entrance that is the new entrance. There's not going to be a stoplight there to regulate traffic.
The stoplight will remain.
That would remain where the sign currently is?
No, the proposed sign location that we're proposing, there's an existing stoplight there, that is going to remain.
The other thing I got a question for you is, like, you talked about two things, color versus content. You need a bigger sign and provide more content because there's a lot of information going on there. Maybe one, basically to be allowed to have something other than a dark background with light text, whether it's yellow or white. Which is more important, content or color?
Definitely the message out from the school. So the message is the most important. I think it was brought up the last meeting about all these signs just having a white background that's really bright. That was brought up. So we would limit or stay away from white background. I can see though, if the school would like, a yellow background with black text, then that doesn't fall or meet the criteria set forth.
We brought up that the background should be darker than letters. Whether we said white, that is just, again, the example of the background should be darker than the letters. Reduce brightness, which I would expect that you should take into consideration of the light study. We put that together.
Just want to make sure we got my facts straight here. I heard some things that were a little bit ambiguous. You represented that the footprint is smaller.
Correct. The overall footprint of the sign, the new sign, is smaller than the sign we're replacing. So the overall square footage is 100, or the existing sign, total footprint of area is 191 square feet. The new sign that we're proposing, counting the brick, the LED area, is 184 square feet.
Okay, the staff just told us this new sign is 33% bigger.
So the height of the new sign, I went out there and I field measured, it is actually only about just over 5 feet tall. It's not the 6 feet tall that's constructed out there. The existing sign, one side is about 6'9" height, and the other side is about 6 foot. So the total square footage, that's kind of where the difference is falling in.
So if I might, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed all that at the end, but I think that where some of the confusion is caused is that I think what Mr. Franklin is conveying is that the overall area of the entire sign structure, it may be slightly smaller, I'm not sure, because I think what he's talking about is the entire structure, because this one, the existing one is taller, certainly, at least as we understand.
Well, he said footprint, which basically means the space is occupied on the ground regardless of
The elevation, the elevation.
Well, yeah,
elevation.
So if I may, when we regulate sign area, we don't regulate this space or this space. We look at where there's sign copy. So we draw the smallest rectangle around this copy here, and then of course count the entire message sign. And so with the existing sign, there's actually more copy area in this rectangle because it's 2 lines, but the message sign is smaller. Whereas then when we come over here, we count this 1 line rectangle plus the message sign, and that still gets us to, go back to that. So that gets us to 93 square feet versus the 90. We didn't measure the entirety of the whole brick structure because there's no sign copy, so that doesn't count as sign area. So that might account for the discrepancy when Mr. Franklin is saying that the overall size is actually slightly smaller now.
It might be helpful if we used very specific vocabulary. When we're saying the sign, we're referring to the whole structure. But then there's also the base part, which my understanding is smaller than the original sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the electronic message part, which is bigger than the original sign. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah, and these very close, the existing electronic messaging sign, I calculated, he's close, I counted 63 square feet versus the 78 in the new, so that gets about a 24% increase as far as the LED size of the sign.
So the sign itself is not significantly larger than the original, it's just the allocation of what this space is being used for, larger electronics, smaller base.
That is correct.
But still is irrelevant because this is a brand new placement, and so it's a brand new request for variance, and which means you have to explain to us the practical difficulty and meet all the other criteria for why you should not be limited to, what is it, 6 feet? Or what the standard is.
The action request is on a 12-foot tall freestanding sign. The maximum allowed is 6 foot.
Yeah, so
It
that's,
has 93 square feet of sign area, the maximum is 3 feet. With an electronic message.
right, so that's the variance. It's not from what we used to have or what is currently there, it's from what the ordinance requires. So that's what we need to hear. I can tell you I'm favorable to this because I think we should support our schools, and I agree with staff's argument that this is more akin to a commercial building than the entrance to a neighborhood. I wish that Avon had come back and asked that this be rezoned industrial because then we would not have this problem, but they didn't. But that's your argument to make.
Yeah, but we feel like the height of the sign is not obtrusive or too high, but it does allow the messages to be displayed in a manner to people in the community. So that's one reason, the height, trying to maintain that height and visibility, getting the messages out. Again, when you elected in the school, does not change the messages. They delay it for 10 seconds before they do change that message. So that's another kind of indication of that sign changing.
Other questions for the petitioner? And we'll bear up the discussion. We have last week. That last time, I'm sorry.
For this issue, for this agenda item.
Is there anyone signed up to speak on this? Welcome, someone signed up to speak. What do you got here?
There's no one signed up to speak on this matter.
Now just remind the board that you have the letter that was submitted before last month's hearing. We haven't received any other correspondence since then.
It's supposed to be the
I'm sorry.
public hearing.
I would say it's.
Okay. We'll reopen the public hearing at 7:26. Does anyone wish to speak? No one coming forward, we will close the public hearing at 7:26.
Not necessarily you this time, but for our discussion amongst ourselves. Paul, I want to ask, when you were talking about the signage and the practical difficulty, again, I'm going to go back to you. It sounds like there's a need because it's a big area with a lot of content. I don't discount that. There's a lot of content that is communicated with electronic sign that can be changed and be presented out to parents, students, anybody that's come by there. But the way you describe it concerns me because it's not a large, it's akin to a large commercial development, which would then imply that a large commercial development should be allowed a electronic sign. We don't have that in our ordinance. So I'm concerned with the way we're phrasing the practical difficulty is that the size of the property with the potential of the content, which is subjective, could be allowed to have electronic sign is the argument for approving the variance. And I really want to really nitpick that wording because, and I look for advice and counsel here, is like a previous approval of a variance. Does that set precedent for future variances?
And Paul, if I can piggyback on that. I had the same things going through my mind you brought up commercial property. It doesn't matter what type of property, our ordinance does not allow for electronic signs security. It does?
Well, I'd like council to answer,
Yeah, I'd like.
make sure about the precedents.
No, the Board of Zoning Appeals has not set precedent with its cases. It's not like a court that way, so if you decide something on similar facts differently, even next meeting, it's your prerogative to do so.
So the variance that was approved in 2010 was a variance at that point in time. It sets no precedence for any other case that's brought before us.
No, so they're allowed that variance, they're allowed to go by that variance, so what they have now is perfectly fine. But since they're asking for a new variance, whatever you decide now, you don't have to hinge your decision on previous decision making, nor will your future decision making hinge on that either. You're just deciding on this thing today, that's all it will affect.
So it can be persuasive, but it's not binding.
Yes, it can persuade you in the future, individual members differently. However, it's not binding, certainly not, because different boards may have different opinions about other things in the future.
And you had another question?
I didn't have, I had other comments. Oh, did you want to respond? I'm sorry, I cut you out.
No, I just wanted to respond to Paul's comment or question on practical difficulty. And I think maybe it would be better to phrase it rather than just the size of the property and the size of the building, but a high school is more of a community institution, which is a unique use that perhaps hasn't been properly considered when the sign regulations portion of the UDO was written, and that a high school, especially when it's the only high school in the jurisdiction, the only public high school in the jurisdiction, is more of a community institution that is unique, not only from all of the other residential development that you're going to see in the R1 or the other residential districts, but also from commercial properties that might similarly be large and make the same request, in that they have activities and information that are unique, that are in the public interest, that aren't just a promotional message of what's on sale this week, or what our new product is. It is unique from either residential or commercial developments in the information that you would typically see displayed on such a sign for a large public high school.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that definition of practical difficulty. And signs are always really, really tough to pass that hurdle on from a statutory standpoint. And the only ones I can ever remember that we granted for size were based on and I got Dan Taylor's words ringing in my ear. You know, what's peculiar about the property where you can't do anything on it. You know, that's what practical difficulty is. We found in the past, and I can think of at least on 2 occasions, where we've had lots that were very narrow and very short frontage, but were very deep. And I know we granted variances for those as practical difficulty. But again, I had something peculiar with the property. In this case, I just don't see it. We don't allow electronic signs. And there's nothing unusual about the property. That's a school like every other school. And if they don't get it, they still exist as a school. And I know we've heard arguments about, you know, we need to communicate. Well, that doesn't fall into the realm of practical difficulty. But it's also my experience. That's not, you know, having 3 kids in the school system. That's not how the school communicates. They communicate through telephones and social media and email and everything else. Students don't need to know where the front entrance is. They're in that facility every day. So again, I've harped on, you know, the statutory criteria 3, which is practical difficulty. Then I go back to what we had last month, which is the letter from Mr. Friel talking about how you guys put the sign up in my, you know, right in front of my house, and now it's lit up like a Christmas tree. And we haven't really discussed that either, which speaks to the statutory criteria too. So I've still got the same two issues that I had last month, and I haven't been persuaded by any.
Well, I think we have two issues, or more than two issues. We have the electronic sign issue. You know, there's not a large high school that I've been in the past that doesn't have an electronic sign. That reason doesn't mean that's what we should do, but, you know, we do want to support our schools. The other issue is, you know, the size of the sign. And again, I go back to why is this R1? It should be institutional, and that would solve a lot of problems. Besides that, I agree that a school this large should have a larger sign. I believe that there is, you know, part of the messaging is done on that sign. And I understand that's not how schools communicate. You know, it used to be, we got sent home with a newsletter every Friday. That's not the case anymore. And then the lighting issue, I think one of the arguments was that there's been a sign 300 feet away with similar, this is going to have smaller wattage, more constraints. I think the lighting issue can be overcome. But the bigger issue is, do we allow Avon High School to have a sign commensurate to the one they've already had in a different spot? And do we allow them to have electronic messaging? Those are the two things that come into play here. The others, I think, have been addressed by our conditions.
So, to the conditions that we have proposed, the light, we did move forward with this with the one condition about the lighting plan. To me, that's something that we should have before we even consider to move on this variance. Because I'm not sure if we move forward with the variance and if we would say approve this, how does that change anything? Is it then they would have to comply to the ordinance 6.10A? Is that what that indicates, Paul? Is that there is no deviation from that? The
way that condition is written, yes, they would have to submit a lighting plan just like they would if they were developing the site, putting up overhead light poles with overhead lights on them. And that would require it to not, if you go with that condition, the amount of sign, light coming off the sign doesn't exceed what would be allowed by overhead lighting spilling across the property line.
Just here's a question, and
I would like to continue to finish your line. And then on the background color, I understand that the way you phrase it means interpreted we like to not be held to that commitment. Now, I can't move off of that. That is, we talked about lighting electronic signs frequently with years, and that the background color would be darker than the messages. And that, to me, for me, needs to be supported, to be able to support that. I also don't think of this as non-supporting schools. It's asking schools to work with the town to make sure that we have what's needed to meet the town requirements, as well as be good citizens and neighbors, the people living around that. So I am, as a citizen, when I look at the letter that was supplied to us, I understand and empathize with that, of having light pollution into my property at night when I'm trying to go to sleep or do things.
I appreciate the comment, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to be off from the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Island. And the school will have the background color display be darker than the text. So I did change that and retract that comment. So we accept that condition number 1.
I have a question about the lighting plan. I don't know anything about how these things are done. I am completely ignorant, but is it possible to do a lighting plan for electronic messaging? Since it's constantly changing? I mean, sometimes that 8-second or 10-second thing might be brighter than the one before it or after it. I mean, do they do that? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on that, I would think they would, the engineer, whoever puts together that plan would base it on the brightest output, although as the petitioner has said, it's maybe a little bit complicated by the fact that these signs typically are set nowadays to be brighter during the day when you're competing with daylight, and then to automatically adjust to be lighter or to be dimmer in the evening hours. So I think what we reasonably would look for there is what's the maximum potential light output from the sign, in the dark hours. 'Cause it's probably not going to be an issue of being too bright during the middle of the day. So we would want to see what the light output would be when it's the maximum light output based on the different type of messages that might be displayed, but during the dimmer setting after dusk.
So does, and again, I don't know if anybody here knows the answer to this question, but just from a mechanical, technical point of view, can the electronic sign have a limit on how bright it can be? Like, I can only turn my phone volume up to a certain point and then it doesn't get any louder.
Yes, so there's a max and then that scales back. So just like in the evening, that light intensity or power will be scaled back to less and less and less. During the day, it will be higher because it's fighting with the daylight, so yes.
Okay.
To add to what you said, Marcus, I still don't see meeting criteria for the right difficulty. I again see, we talk about the size of the school and a lot of information. Was that a difficulty of that property? I don't think so. I can't see that we met criteria 3 and there was a practical difficulty.
That wasn't a question for you, was it?
I'm happy to, it was more to say, speak more on the board here on where we're at with that. I thought about this at school and communicates a lot of information, and information changes. I changed the school board when I was a kid. I tried out in the snow to do that anymore. It was not fun. So I can understand the need for that. And there's conditions that we've asked for to be met here. The absolute minimum that would have to be done. I'm gonna get over criterion 3 because I don't know if that really is a practical difficulty of it's easier.
Now, are you talking about criterion 3 as to the electronic sign part of this, or as to the taller sign part of this, or both?
Well, it's all tied together.
Yeah.
So it's all one variance.
So you would object to?
I would not object to the size. It's more trying to the electronic part of the sign. The size is similar to what they have on each column. So when the set still is consistent. It's not radically changing.
Is it possible to see what we're talking about? Is it possible to have an example so we can make an intelligent decision?
Example of what?
Just show me how it's gonna illuminate. Show me how bright it'll be so this gentleman can get some sleep. That's the kind of thing. I'm very practical. I'm just, yeah.
And that's the reason I talked about the first meeting implementing from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Right.
It's a black screen.
Right.
So basically it goes into its sleep mode. So there will be no light emitted from that to the neighbors.
Right, I understand that, unless he works out hours, I don't know. I'm just wondering if there was something, I like to see things, I like to hold things and see things. I know a little bit about this, I worked in marketing a long time, this is a graphics issue. One person's gonna sit at a computer, and they're gonna change that message every single day, or whatever their frequency is. And they have, just like we do in graphics, You could pick background, you could pick color, you could pick brightness, darkness, all of that, right? It's foreign to some and familiar to others. I don't do graphics, but I know about graphics, and I know that's what's going on with that sign. It's not rocket science. However, if it's a lot of surface area and someone's picking a white or a gold background or whatever, and it's whoop, and all the neighbors, you know, I can see that. I can see all of that. I'm human. I wouldn't like it either. However, I just like to see it. I don't know. I just like to see what it's going to look like. So I don't know if we can do a few PowerPoint slides or something that show what it kind of would look like. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I may be asking for something that's like, did you just be quiet, we want to go home? Yeah, these are the kind of things I'm looking for. Thank you.
Can you show, like, compared to like this painting, what the size of the electronic board would be? Compared to like this painting or these?
So it is, 6 feet tall, so it's about this tall. Right here, this is a 7-foot door, 6 feet tall. And then it's 13.
You're talking about the electronic message?
Yeah, the electronic message part, yes.
Okay.
So about 6 feet tall, and then 13 feet, so probably this ceiling is not quite 13, so it's close to 13, but not quite 13, so this is probably around 12 feet.
So roughly from that door jamb to this window, wide?
Yeah.
Maybe a little wider.
Again, the width the width is staying the same, so the width of the existing, the width of the new are not changing.
You don't have any more of these with messaging on them?
I do not have any with wording or text on it, so I apologize.
Okay. That's what I was kind of, did you understand what I was trying to,
No,
that the apple choir is just trying to make an intelligent decision based on.
totally understand your question, totally understand.
Something like that, staff, if you could help me get one more time with the practical difficulty. Because again, I'm struggling with that. And if you could go over that again so to help us to understand your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different ways that we can see a practical difficulty. One is, as I indicated, what the sign regulations in the UDO are allowing, and how that typically manifests itself is as a sign for a subdivision entrance or for the entrance to an apartment complex. And what you have here is a unique type of use that is very different from those uses that are what the ordinance is typically expecting to allow signs for in R1. And so,
So does our sign ordinance specifically call out the use, so the signs associated with a specific use?
no, the sign regulations are by district. So we have certain things that are allowed in residential districts, certain parameters that are allowed in commercial districts, certain parameters that are allowed in industrial districts. So, and as has been mentioned, the school could perhaps arguably, although it's perfectly fine for it to be zoned R1 because it's a permitted use there, it could perhaps even more appropriately be zoned institutional. If it were to be rezoned to the institutional district at the time of rezoning, if a master plan is approved, there can be a sign program approved at that time, or depending on how typically the rezoning includes a master plan, which can include a sign program at that time, or it can be left to be approved administratively by staff in the future. But the ordinance doesn't have any particular parameters for signs in the institutional district. So nothing would ever come before you as a variance, because it would be left to the discretion of the planning commission or the planning staff if the commission chose to delegate that to us to determine what would be appropriate based on what development and use is occurring in that particular institutional zoning district. So the fact that the site isn't zoned institutionally and it is zoned R1 can also be viewed as its practical difficulty, that it doesn't have the most appropriate zoning. In addition to what we've already, talked about it being a unique community asset type of use that does typically have a need to provide more varied information than what you would certainly expect from other residential permitted uses like subdivisions and apartment complexes. And it is, I think as already mentioned, fairly customary to see this type of sign for high schools throughout the metro area. Obviously, so that's not a precedent that says that because another jurisdiction allows these, or such as Indianapolis, or Marion County, I know allowed variances from their code to allow similar type signs at all of their high schools. That's not meant to be said that that's a precedent that you need to follow, but it does show that it is typical of what you would see for this type of development. And then we would go back to saying that the practical difficulty at that point is that, there would be another, I guess, zoning classification that could allow this type of sign, but they don't have that zoning. And I don't know that it's incumbent upon them necessarily to change their zoning classification just to try to get a sign that would be typical and appropriate for the development that is present on that property.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Any other discussion? If there is none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve BAR 24-05, 7575 East County Road 150 South, the variance of developer standards to allow for a freestanding sign exceeding the maximum amount, height, and maximum sign area with an electronic message component in R1 because it will meet all requirements for variance of development standards under state law and subject to the approved findings and effects. And with the conditions previously set forth, would that be appropriate?
So we did agree to all the conditions. I retracted that number 4 on the background color, so.
Okay, so we're going okay, subject to the conditions that have been agreed to by petitioner. This approval shall be subject to the conditions outlined with the published staff report on file.
The motion by Mrs. Rand, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Linda, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Marcy Tesler. 4. Catherine Rainford, 4. Ann Inman, 4. Paul Lukenberger.
Against.
Marcus Turner.
Against?
Thank you, board. Thank you.
Motion carries. I am not sure we should be adding additional criteria, even though it used to be there. If there's only 3 now, I would prefer to be consistent with statutory law.
The 3 that are required for development standard variances have been consistent with state statute. So you added the 2 in, even though at the time they were not part of state statute.
So statute hasn't changed,
Correct.
so we were not consistent with state statute previously. We had
You were,
addition, we
You
had
had
additional.
additional. You had additional. And I believe the UDO was just matching the statute, and I don't know whether it was intentional. So we can research that to make sure that we're permitted to do that. And then if we are, then we will propose it to council at work session.
So while we're talking about other things that I'd ask you to think about and take to the plan commission, maybe a sign ordinance specific around schools that would help with the discussion that we just had, because with the schools being permitted use in zoning other than institutional, if we can avoid discussions like this, make it easier on both you and the petitioners for future, which may not come again for another 10 years, depending on Avon Road, but it would be beneficial.
Anything else for the good of the cause? We're adjourned, thank you.